What's up, gang? Richie here. Good to see you. Another episode of the Flip Side with Richie Flip. This is going to be a fun one, lighthearted kind of all the way around, but it does kind of hit home knowing how long ago it's been with some of these things that we're going to talk about. But let's get into it. And like the title says, I got to see all the good bands. All right. So if you're like me, you're on social media. I mean, I'm on it, not on it, but I'm on it. I can actually do without it more and more as these days go on here. But every once in a while you would see something pop up in one of your feeds saying, "Oh, I got to see all the good bands," or how many bands did you see? Is how many points it's going to be, that whole thing. Um, and I've really given this some thought, and yeah, truly, if you're my age, again, early 50s, but even older than me, and maybe a little bit younger, but from this age on and on. Um, it is, I'm actually, I don't usually write notes, but I've got some notes in front of me here as far as the bands that I've seen, over the last 30 plus years. And it truly is. You kind of put yourself in that category of, yeah, I got to see all the good bands. I mean, I think it's a completely different world right now. We'll get into that later. Um, but maybe we could actually, maybe we'll start with that first, just to kind of, at least in my opinion here. Um, it used to be affordable to go to shows. It used to be somewhat easy. You camp out at Ticketmaster and you get your tickets, first come, first serve. And it just isn't like that anymore today. I mean, you've got to almost take out a mortgage on a house, um, to be able to go to see some of these bands now. $100 to $200 seems like it's the average and quote unquote normal price to go see a band. And it's just so different than when it was when I was, in my 20s and 30s, even 40s. Um, it's a different world now. And I'm not even sure I can name you five bands right now that I'd want to go see at all, newer bands. There's one that comes to mind, and that's that Mammoth with Wolfgang Van Halen. I think that'd be a good show to go see because, I mean, this kid's got so much talent. Kid, he's 30 plus years old, I think, right now. But um, true musician, I mean, you thought his father was great. I mean, I think he's going to blow him away one of these days as far as just in terms of where they are, um, when it's all said and done with their careers. But I can't see myself wanting to go see many new bands at all. There's a couple that are still out there that I want to see. Iron Maiden is touring, which is probably going to be, I think it's the Run for Your Lives tour. I'm not sure if they've announced it as the final tour, but we're getting close to it, right? Rush is back on the road with that 50 something tour with Annika Niles, sitting in for the late great Neil Peart. So I'm hoping to go see that show. There's not a whole lot of other bands out that I want to see that are new, but I know some of the bands that I do like are still out there, and I've seen them before. And we're gonna go over this list. It's just harder and harder to want to go to a show these days. Having to go now, the one thing that's a bit of an issue for me is that I'm no longer in the Northeast. In New Jersey, right outside of New York City. I mean, growing up, not even growing up, just while I was there. I mean, I had opportunity after opportunity to see shows, whether it was at the Meadowlands, whether it was at Madison Square Garden. I don't think I ever got to the Nassau Coliseum for a concert, but that was out there as well. And then just the different theaters. I mean, as I'm thinking about this, I'm writing things down as far as other bands in different theaters I've seen. Uh, Bear with me here because it's like I can't believe I forgot these. But you've got the Bergen Pack, Performing Arts Center. There was the theater in Morristown, the theater in out in Newton, New Jersey. As I'm writing these, I'm just kind of writing things down here because I forgot all these shows I've been to. And that was the beauty of living up that way. Okay, that is definitely one of the things that I missed now that I'm in the Charlotte area was the opportunity to go almost anywhere within a 40-minute drive and have the ability to see a really good show, whether it was in a theater, whether it was at the old Giant Stadium or MetLife Stadium, or any one of the arenas there. Prudential Center now, which is in New Jersey, which took the place of, in Newark, which was at that time, if before that arena, you had the Meadowlands Arena, right? Brendan Byrne, then the Meadowlands Arena, and all the other names I gave. It was Izod Center, one thing after another. Um, and I think that's what I miss most about live shows, is that I had that chance to go almost anywhere I wanted, to see bands. But I didn't really get started till I was a little bit older than most of my friends. I mean, I remember being freshman, sophomore in high school, and people coming to school the next day. They'd seen Def Leppard, they had seen Poison, and this is when they were at their peak. I mean, if you want to call it that. Poison was what 80, 86 was that first album, so they were kind of making a name for themselves. Def Leppard was probably 7 years into their career at that point, as far as the album releases, and it was just the one show I didn't get to go see was Van Halen on the OU81 tour, because they didn't play locally. They did a Monsters of Rock stadium tour with, again, think about this. On this bill was Van Halen was the headliner, Metallica, Scorpions, uh, Dokken, and Kingdom Come. That would have been something pretty cool to see. The one thing, and when I think about shows, is the one, if I can go back in time and see a show, there's one show that always comes up for me, and it was out in California in '83, the US Festival on the Metal Day, and that's where Van Halen was the headliner. I guess they were coming off of the Diver Down album. It was that tour, but you had that, and I don't remember the exact order of everything, but it was Triumph. I think it was Motley Crue, Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne, Quiet Riot, and Van Halen. Imagine going and seeing that show. I mean, that's one of those things. If I can go back in time, that's the one I would go see. But right now, there's nothing that comes close to, I think, the live shows, at least in my opinion. Maybe it's because I'm just old, but as far as the new music, something just doesn't click with me. I don't know what it is or why it is, but I guess I'm kind of just stuck in my era of music. My dad was the same way. He was, when he got to a certain point, he goes, I can't listen to that music anymore. And that line in the sand for him was Zeppelin, Led Zeppelin. He called it heavy metal. He goes, I can't get into that heavy metal. And I understand that now as I get older. But it's just hard for me to find a reason to go see some new bands unless it's a a cheap ticket, it's local, or if I'm going to get it for free. Again, old man here. I mean, if I don't have, I don't want to go out all the time. I don't want to get out and sit in traffic. But it is what it is, I guess, as far as the new music. And I wish I could say something different about it, but nothing really catches me as far as wanting to go see a band. And that's kind of where this conversation, started taking shape for me. Was like, but you get to go back and for me, not that you want to live in the past, but going back and looking. I have this list here, and I'm looking at it. I've been adding to it as I've been, sitting here talking to you. But it's like, it's ridiculous the amount of shows I went to, and I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for. I got one in particular, and I'm going to go through a lot more of these. I saw Rush for the first time in 1992, June 19th, 1992, Meadowlands Arena. Went with my sister. I had a pair of tickets, and she had never, she knew one song, Tom Sawyer. Everyone knows Tom Sawyer. But we went, and I'll never forget. We left that building, and we were, if you know the old Meadowlands Arena, where the ticket center was underneath there in that lower level, and you come out into the parking lot, that's where we were. We were in between those doors, and she goes, Rich, that was an amazing show. And she had only known one song, but it captured her for the entire show, right? The lasers and the lights and everything that goes along with it. I paid less than $40 for 2 tickets on the floor. Again, if you know the arena, at that time it was section 2, which was in the back, the middle section in the back, and it was actually on some risers. So that way, if you think about it as a if the basketball court was out there, you were on that section right behind the hoop, basically section 2. And I got those at a ticket center at the Willowbrook Mall in Wayne, New Jersey. So I paid a little bit more than face value. So think about that. A little bit more than face value. Seeing Rush, it was the Roll the Bones tour. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but boy, can I remember concerts and dates and all that. It's terrible. But I think it was like $38 or $39 and change for 2 tickets on the floor to see Rush, Roll the Bones, and the opening act was Mr. Big. Forgot about that one too. Again, as you start going down memory lane, all this stuff comes back. That wasn't my first concert. The first one that comes to mind is Genesis, which was only about a month or two before that. They played across the street at Giant Stadium. I don't think there was an opening act, but it was a stadium show and it was big. And we sat underneath the press boxes in the lower level. Again, if you remember the old Giant Stadium, you're kind of almost like at the 50-yard line, I guess. And in the end zone was, the stage. But it was a great show. I knew some of Genesis catalog, not the really older stuff that goes way back, even maybe to the Peter Gabriel days. So I don't know how far back it went offhand, but that was a great show. I mean, fantastic show. So that was the kind of like the first couple shows that I had gone to kind of get me into that concert lifestyle, if we want to call it that. And then slowly other things started to happen for me. Um, I don't remember, again, I'm going to kind of go off the cuff here with some of the timeline, but I ended up seeing Rush again. I saw Rush. It was off the Counterparts tour, so it was the album was released in '93, and '94 was the tour. I saw them at Madison Square Garden. They did 2 nights there. I believe it was the second night, maybe March 9th of '94. Candlebox was the opener. Candlebox, by far for me, just that '90s music, that grunge, post grunge, whatever you want to call it, one of the best bands in my opinion that came out of the '90s. Check out their first album, just self-titled Candlebox. It falls to that category for me where you really don't have to skip a track. It's all really good. So I would start with that if you want to kind of check out some music from the past if you're not familiar with it. And Candlebox is still around today, and I would love to try to see them if possible because Peter Klett, the original guitarist, is back in the fold, and to me he was one of the most underrated guitarists that came out of the '90s. But I saw Rush, Candlebox open for them. That was in March of '94, and then I saw them over a weekend on a Friday night, and I saw them on a Sunday night. It was in April, like April 22nd, April 24th, or April 21st, April 23rd, was something like that. But it was a Friday night at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and then again Candlebox opened, and then it was Hartford, Connecticut on that Sunday. Again, Candlebox opened, so it was like that was kind of me getting to my concert groove. And then after that, I think the next really big show was Pink Floyd. And that was wild. I mean, again, it was back at Giant Stadium. It was '94. They had done 2 nights there. I saw the second night, no opening act, but man, oh, what a show that was. To see Pink Floyd, and they did Dark Side of the Moon cover to cover. I mean, you could tell music's my passion, right? And I can't remember things that I should remember, but man, when it comes to music and things that I'm passionate about, you just kind of go into that Wayback Machine and you're there again. Wish I had the type of technology I did now than I did back then because the pictures you could take and all that good stuff. But it is what it is. But you know, it's just something that I think if you're like me, you're my age, you're just so many shows that you've seen, so many shows you wish you had gone to. Um, it was a good time. You're going with friends, you're going with friends, friends, family members, significant others. It's just a great time. It was just a great time. I'm going to kind of read from something right now. I don't like reading off my notebook, but just kind of just doing stuff here. Looking at the shows I've been to. The first Springsteen show I went to was '95, and that was an event as well. Beacon Theater, New York City, December 18th, right around there, '95, and it was the Ghost of Tom Joad tour. He was doing the solo thing, and people were saying, "Oh, it's not going to be good. It's not the E Street Band," and I had some people saying, "Doesn't matter. It's Springsteen. You're going to go there and you're going to just love it." And I did. It was a good show. He was touring in support of the Ghost of Tom Joad album, so it was more acoustic. It was more folksy. Everyone said it was kind of like Nebraska, but it really wasn't because Nebraska had a different vibe. Um, but it was great. He took some of his the hits and repurposed them for this tour, so that was kind of cool to see. But that was a great show, and that was the first of I'm going to guess 25, 30, 40 shows of seeing Springsteen. '99 was the reunion tour, so that was a big one for me. I saw 12 of 15 shows at the Meadowlands, 4 of 10 shows at the Garden in New York City. I'm going to say 4 out of 6 shows in Philly, 1 show in Boston, 1 show in Albany, 1 show in Penn State. You get the picture. Back then, I went to I loved seeing Springsteen live, and I was not paying an arm and a leg for these tickets. I think I was still paying face value, and maybe each one was $50, $60. The upside was that I was still living home with my parents because it wasn't too long after college and all this was going on. So I took full advantage of that. There's no way I could do something like that today with the cost of everything. Um, Even though I know that people who I haven't talked to in years probably still do it. I don't know how they do it, but they still do it. So, but that was just, again, those are just some of again, Springsteen was in '95, '99 was 2000 was the reunion tour, 2002, 2003 was the Rising tour. Um, that was a good one too. The final show of the Rising, 2003 at Shea Stadium in the Queens. Dylan came out for a song. I don't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but again, and he played Tunnel of Love. I love that song. So again, how I remember this stuff, it's a shame. It really is. But even with Rush, 94 was the Counterparts tour. And then I didn't see them for almost 10 years after that. But I saw them at the R30 and Radio City Music Hall, Snakes and Arrows tour, the Time Machine tour, Clockwork Angels, the R40 tour, and I'm hoping to see them again, this time around, back in November, I think, when they come to the Charlotte area. So, and again, Van Halen, saw them 3 times. Never saw them with Roth, but I saw them once with Hagar and 2 times with Sharon. Collective Soul opened up for the show with Van Halen at the Knickerbocker Arena up in Albany. They were fantastic. This was off the Balance tour for 95. And then in 98, I saw them twice when Sharon was in the band for Van Halen 3. And I don't remember who opened the Garden show, if there was even somebody who opened for. They had to be. I have to look at this now. But Kenny Wayne Shepherd was the opener for the second show at the I don't know at that time if it was still the PNC Bank Arts Center, if it was the Garden State Arts Center, but the one in Holmdel, New Jersey, and I think Kenny Wayne Shepherd almost blew them off the stage, believe it or not. So that was one of the, great shows I saw. Tell you, one of the more crazy shows that I saw just was a head scratcher was Harry Connick Jr. I think this was 94 down in Holmdel, New Jersey. Harry Connick Jr., more of a crooner, a modern day Frank Sinatra, modern day Michael Bublé, if you want to kind of go down that route. For whatever reason, and again, it's an older crowd. I mean, older the crowd. People are tailgating with picnic baskets and wine bottles and fruit and cheese, and I'm there with my buddies, and we're walking around with cans of Coors Light. It was quite the scene. But Harry Connick Jr. comes on stage, and he comes out with a guitar hanging from his shoulder, and it wasn't just any guitar. It was the Ernie Ball Music Man guitar, which was the same model that Eddie Van Halen was working on, where he had been endorsing with Ernie Ball. And you knew it wasn't like a Strat style guitar, so I didn't know what he was going to do with it. And he came out and he was just loud. I don't even remember what he was playing or how he was playing it, but it was heavily distorted guitar. And within minutes, people were walking up the aisles and leaving. I'd never seen something like that before in my life. Just a stream of people, and I think to the point he even apologized. He apologized to the crowd like the next day or two via Z100. At least there was a message that went out on Z100 from New York City, how people were just so disappointed in the show. So I'll never forget that one. I don't even know how long we stayed there. We had free tickets, I think, or tickets were cheap and we went. But some of the other bands that I've seen, which to me were great shows, and they're still around, a lot of these folks. So if you can get to see a show, at some point it's worth doing. Iron Maiden, 3 or 4 times, definitely worth seeing. Bon Jovi, a little different right now because I'm a big Richie Sambora fan. So if no Richie in the band, then it's probably not something I'm going to be rushing out to do, but doesn't mean it's not a good show. It's just I'm a Richie Sambora fan, so we'll leave it at that. I will say I saw Bon Jovi a couple times. The first time I saw them was in 2000. I think it was 2000 or 2001 for the Crush tour, and that was the Meadowlands. My goodness, the people watching there was unbelievable. I mean, I was spending more time watching the crowd than the show at times. So that was kind of cool. I saw one gig where it was Tesla was the opener, REO Speedwagon, and then Def Leppard at the Arts Center in New Jersey. That was a good time. And then there were some bands I saw that I couldn't believe I actually enjoyed. One of them was Colin Hay from Men at Work. If you're not familiar with Colin Hay, but you're familiar with Men at Work, you have to just start checking out his solo stuff. Amazing music, amazing songwriter. Because I think Men at Work had 3 albums and they were done, and then Colin Hay went out on his own. But I saw actually seen Colin Hay twice. The first time I saw him was at the Newton Theater in New Jersey, and this has to be pushing 10 years now. And it was fantastic. He did a great job. He had a band with him, but he played all of his hits and Men at Work hits. And then about 2 years ago, maybe it was 2 years, just over 2 years, I saw him, and he did a solo acoustic tour, which is really what I had wanted to see to begin with, at William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey. Fantastic night, just him, and he's a great storyteller. He's entertaining. He should be a comedian on the side. So that was an awesome show. And then another fantastic weekend of music was back in 2001-ish, 2002. On a Friday night, I saw Leonard Skinner. And then that Saturday night at the Garden in New York City, I saw AC/DC. Fantastic weekend of music. That just doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't happen. Um, and then two two shows, or at least a time frame where I saw two shows that had completely changed my life. And I don't mean for the better, unfortunately, because of the timing of it and what happened personally, which maybe one day I'll get into, but not now. But that was kind of like the line in the sand where I remember things going south from a personal perspective point of view. I saw the Beach Boys doing the Christmas stuff. Again, the Beach Boys. It was Mike Love and Bruce Johnston were the only original members of the Beach Boys in this particular gig as the Beach Boys in Morristown. And it was funny. I got the last ticket, and the whole ticket thing was always a game back in the '90s, late '90s, mid '90s with Ticketmaster. One of the tricks I always had is that you never knew if they're going to drop tickets. So I happened to go to the theater that night, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's one seat left." I mean, it was up in the nosebleeds, but I got in relatively cheap price. And then that was a Saturday, and I want to say that following Wednesday, I saw Brian Wilson and his band at the Bergen Pack Center over in where was it? Englewood, New Jersey. Is that where it is? I think that's where it is. Which was unfortunate. I'm glad I got to see Brian Wilson before he passed, but it was tough to watch at times. One or two train wrecks musically, but I got to see the great Brian Wilson and his band, and you could always find things online about that. But it was still just being in the presence, right? And then personally, some things went downhill from there. Anyway, it just kind of shows you, how much music I've seen out there, and you probably have done the same thing. I wish I had seen more stuff from the '90s. And when I say '90s, Gin Blossoms, Live, Soul Asylum. Those are the bands I wish I'm into now, but I should have been more into back then to see them live. That would have been some good times right there. But it is what it is. But again, it kind of shows you how important music is to me. Seeing the live music. I play in a band now, and I think from seeing all these bands over the years, I wanted to play in a band. And trust me, it's not like I'm getting thousands of people, to the gigs. We get a few, which is cool. We're a cover band. We're doing a lot of '80s and '90s. The band is called Neon Flannel. We're based out of here in the Charlotte area. I think the biggest gig I ever played to was when I was in my Springsteen cover band back up north, and we played. We were in Westport, Connecticut, and we were playing an amphitheater. We had a crowd of about 1,200 people in front of us for a 90-minute show. So that was pretty wild. But music has been a passion of mine. I get that from my father. I don't think there's any other place I've gotten it from. Because growing up, I listened to the oldie station, CBS FM 101.1, Cousin Brucey and Harry Harrison, the Morning Mayor, Bobby J, all those individuals on CBS FM. So telling you, at times I thought the radio was broken and we only got one station because my parents never changed it. But I'm thankful that I listened to that and I was able to appreciate the older stuff before I got into my music, if that makes sense. So I can go on forever and ever here about this, but I'm hoping that this kind of took you on a ride down memory lane with the live music you've seen and maybe some new music out there you're going to try. And if you do try, let me know. I'm kind of curious what you've seen and what you think is good. It's hard at times, because we're all kind of stuck in our own little ways of doing things, and adding something new is just something maybe we don't have an interest in right now. But I try. So, but anyway, thanks everyone for hanging out with me. Another episode of The Flip Side with Richie Flip. I got to see all the good bands. I'm hoping you did too. Because I know even from the things that I've seen, there were so many others I never got a chance to see. It just didn't work out. So maybe got you thinking a little bit. I mean, I think I saw some great live shows. I'm sure you did too, and I'm sure there's people listening that saw a whole lot more than I did. So I can only imagine how good those times were. So that's all I got for you. All right, we'll catch up with you on the next episode, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace out.